With the increased attention on digital marketing of breast milk substitutes, including the WHO UNICEF report on the scope and impact, and the decision adopted by the World Health Assembly this year on requesting the Director General to provide governments with guidance on restricting breast milk substitutes marketing on digital platforms, how can a tool that can be programmed to also collect large amount of violations add value or plug gaps to issues related to code implementation and inappropriate marketing that we face at hand?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we've had a lot of research between UNICEF and WHO come out over the past year, just showing how pervasive and fast growing digital marketing of formula milk is. And actually, there's a lot more research that's going to come out over the next year as well. And, it's what we've seen is just what you were saying. It's targeting mothers in very insidious ways at the times they're most vulnerable, when they've just had a baby, making them question, their own feeding decisions, using all sorts of misleading claims around COVID, around immunity. And all of this is being done through digital channels directly to them, showing up on media platforms. So it's certainly an area that needs to be regulated. And of course, it's an area where the companies are ahead of governments with the technology. But we're seeing that that's starting to shift. So more governments are really saying to us and trying to regulate digital environments, which, is something that is actually feasible and from a technical perspective, relatively simple to do because, as you say, a lot of these digital platforms, they have the technology. So the way that they can advertise specifically to a mother about the specific formula that's sold exactly where, she may be at that time can be used to also regulate that sort of marketing. The biggest challenge, I guess, in that will be the monitoring and identifying violations. And that's where I think these sort of AI tools will be so helpful and so important. And again, I think, as you were saying, it's because a strong law isn't just going to regulate the manufacturers, the formula milk companies, but you actually have to regulate the entire space and all the players in it. So that is advertising agencies, that's media platforms, that's all of those intermediaries, as well as the companies, because that can be the entry point for the regulation. So having a tool that can, go through social media platforms, go through websites and help identify those violations is going to be so important for those enforcement efforts. And actually, before we even get to enforcement, before a law is even passed, it's so useful and so important to document the breadths of the violations that we know occur. And, both for the advocacy to governments to make the case for passing the laws, but also because so many of these large formula milk companies, they say they comply with the code. And they say that, they monitor their own violations and they come out with very, very low numbers of violations that they have spotted using whatever methods they use. And so they underplay the problem a lot. And, sometimes that works very well in their favor because governments then are reluctant to regulate it. They rely on the self-regulatory promises of a lot of these companies. And we just know that that's not the case. We see violations all the time. So it's going to be so important for advocates as well to have a tool like this that can really capture the extent of the problem and can show examples of exactly what's going on and exactly the violations that are happening to keep the companies accountable. And so actually I wanted to ask you, because the tool will also be built to later capture harmful marketing of unhealthy foods and drinks. And in this area, what we are now seeing is so much of the marketing in the digital space is specifically targeting young children directly. It also is targeting, obviously, adults and caregivers, but there's so much targeting young children when, there may not be a caregiver there that's even looking at what they're doing in the digital space. from very, very young kids. So how do you expect this tool might be able to help address this issue as well?
Yeah, so I have a young child myself, so this is a concern that really resonates with me. Most of us know that platforms like YouTube is one of the most visited website in the world, but I just happened to be reading an article about a recent study on this topic, and I found that actually more than 80% of parents with the child younger than 12 years old allow the child to watch YouTube, and the trend actually experienced a huge surge during the height of the COVID pandemic when many of the parents had to work from home and the kids also couldn't go to school because of lockdowns. That also happened to me myself. And what I've discovered was that there's this phenomenon that happened, I guess, over the past few years. They have these, kid influencers on social media. And a lot of times they would be doing innocuous activities such as, science experiments, playing with toys, unboxing, making cookies, celebrating the birthdays. They all seem very innocent, but parents may not know that these kid influencers, a lot of them are paid by food companies to promote unhealthy food and drinks in their videos. And also, what I found from the study is that nearly half of the most popular videos from kid influencers promoted food and drinks, and over 90% of these products shown unhealthy commercial foods and drinks such as fast food, candies, and soda. And also, these are not just limited to kid influencers videos, even just mainstream cartoons. There's this one cartoon that my son likes to watch. It features like a wolf. One day I was just looking at it, and the character in the cartoon was actually drinking a can of soda, eating burgers and pizzas. So, kids are being influenced in that way, very insidiously every day. And, with Catch, we want to focus first on code and marketing of breast milk substitutes as the pilot to test the usability of the tool and to test how easy or difficult it is to build the AI model for auto detection. But we are looking at the commercial determinants of health and specifically marketing practices. So we are looking at marketing of unhealthy foods and non-alcoholic beverages to children, which is an area that UNICEF has done a lot of work in and is of great concern. We're also looking at ultra-processed foods, inappropriate labeling, as well as tobacco and alcohol. As a matter of fact, in the Vietnam office, we are in the process of building a tool to monitor tobacco marketing on digital platforms. But because the code and marketing of breast milk substitutes is a topic that we know very well, so we wanted to pilot with this specific area first to make sure that things are working well and then branch off to other areas.
It's fantastic. I'm very, very excited.